Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Corey, better known as the Seaman, and I want to welcome you to another edition of the Seaman's Cinema. Sit down. I tell you, it feels like it's been a while since I just sat on this couch and just did a normal old review. But this movie deserves so much more than just my immediate reaction. This movie is one of the best movies of the year, and never in a million years did I see that being the outcome when I walked out of the theater. I was excited. I'd heard things that made me very excited for this movie, but nothing that I had heard, not even the word masterpiece, made me think I'd be walking out of one of the best films of the year. What am I talking about? Why don't you pull up a chair, take a seat? We are getting ready to dive in spoiler-free into Godzilla Minus One, and just the biggest shout-out and ovation and writer, director, and visual effects supervisor Takashi Yamazaki did create a masterpiece. This is the best Godzilla movie I've ever seen in my life, and now I've seen the original Toho Godzilla. I've seen what Hollywood has produced with Godzilla, and that's it. I have not dipped my toe outside of just YouTube clips into the majority of the Toho Godzillas. Let me tell you, that's about to change because I just want to dive more into this history and with some of the other recent Godzilla movies that have come out of Japan, because this movie blew me away. It was everything I wanted in a Godzilla movie, man. Yamazaki presents him as absolutely terrifying right from jump. There is no point during this movie where he comes off like a hero. Every time Godzilla shows up in this movie, he is just causing disaster and chaos and mayhem, and he is terrifying every time he's on screen. I think that's my favorite thing about this Godzilla movie, is that Yamazaki looks at this as like a starting off spot. You know, you're not seeing the true, say, origin, right? We don't see how Godzilla came to be or where he comes from. But we see what theoretically could be like his first real full-on attack of humankind, and then we just kind of go from there. And you see Godzilla grow. There are different variations of Godzilla, the way he looks in the opening sequence to when he shows up the next time, or the time after that, or where he is by the end of the movie, all completely different, and getting to see a little bit of an evolution behind Godzilla and things that he does. Like, there were elements to Godzilla that I don't think I ever knew were or could be elements to Godzilla. But those elements made him so much more terrifying, and really is this kind of just force of nature through the course of the movie. And that was something that was so refreshing, right? Because even Gareth Edwards, I think, gave you vibes of what that could be like with his Godzilla, even though he didn't show us a ton of Godzilla in that first one coming out of Hollywood in this current run of Godzilla movies that we have. But by the end of the movie, he's fighting Mutos, and he's being looked at as a hero, someone that can save humanity. And it was, like I said, refreshing for me to see Godzilla as just an absolute terror, doing nothing but causing, like I said, destruction, chaos, and mayhem. And the visual effect look of Godzilla and how all the visual effects in the movie function, I don't think you can say enough how important having your writer and director be the guy who's also supervising your visual effects. We talked about this with Gareth Edwards before when he's done visual effects movies, most recently The Creator, where you just get a sense that he can see what needs to fill the screen, and in the way that it would fill the screen with his visual effects background. And that's something that I think you get here with Yamazaki as well. Like, he understands the physics, he understands how things are supposed to move and how things are supposed to look, and when he's shooting it, it's just set up perfectly for those visual effects to be built in, and the visual effects are stellar. Like, I know that they had budget constraints, and I saw an interview where he was talking about how just all the open water was one of the biggest problems to tackle, just because of the sheer size of the files, terabytes and terabytes of information. So right up to listen to him talk, it almost felt like an indie type movie where you've got a budget and you've got space and you've got things that you got to keep inside of this box, and doing that can be really tricky. And yet what you get here looks as good, if not better, than the polished visual effects we get out of Hollywood. And the thing, too, that I love here is it's taken Hollywood a while for them to put Godzilla and King Kong and these monsters in the daytime, with no smoke or no rain, right? Like, Godzilla shows up in this movie initially at night, but then multiple times during the day where he's just on full display. And as he's bouncing through buildings and destroying things, there's not these massive dust clouds covering him up. Like, you see all the details of Godzilla every time he's on screen. The way he moves, like, there's a more I noticed his arms. Like, there's a moment where he screams and his arms do kind of like this, and like, I'd never really noticed how Godzilla's arms work. Super terrifying. But then at times when he's coming in, like, Yamazaki gives you that really static kind of non-moving pose as he walks through, like the classic Godzilla things. And that's the other thing that I love about this movie, is there, I think, are lots of nods to classic Godzilla moments or things about Godzilla, and then throw in the score that comes to us from composer Naoki Sato, who used some of the original Godzilla score and has nods and moments throughout, but the score in this movie is the other thing that makes this freaking thing so terrifying. Every time Godzilla is on screen, Sato is giving you these just music vibes that pull you to the edge of your seat, and also at the same time, like, shrink back, like, you're like, oh man, he is gonna do some terrifying stuff. And watching him blend what he's doing in the music with stuff that came from the original Godzilla movies, and having all of these kind of nods and moments, and this is stuff that I've read about, you know, Sato's score, is that it's just all-encompassing of where Godzilla comes from, and then just gives you these notes that are just pure terror, spine-tingling, goosebump-inducing chords that just hit so perfectly with this creature. And watching how, you know, Yamazaki uses all of that stuff to his advantage as he crafts this movie really does paint Godzilla in a way that I don't think we've ever seen him painted here. And it's terrifying, and I can't wait to see what's next for him. But I think the biggest magic trick that Yamazaki pulls off with this movie is that if you remove the big guy from the film, this is still a really good movie, man. And it all starts by having characters that you care about and that you're invested in and that you can relate to. Not maybe directly, but like as they're going through things or things that are happening, like you don't feel like these are people that are above just normal human beings. And our main character, Koichi, is a kamikaze pilot who ends up having, spoilers, second thoughts about being a kamikaze pilot while he's in the plane. And there's an island that he can land on to kind of get the plane fixed, so he says there's something wrong with it, to kind of compose himself and grapple with what he has in front of him. And while that's happening, Godzilla shows up for the first time. And then we, spoilers, flash forward a year, and you're watching what Koichi has gone through as this kind of disgraced kamikaze pilot. And it's not so much that, like, people know. There's one guy back on the original island that would kind of know what's going on, but mostly it's internal and what it's done to him. And then Godzilla shows up a second time, and you're just kind of caught up in this moment where it's like the things that have held this guy back, well, now you're just looking at him. You know, he ends up joining a boat that collects and destroys mines that were left by the U.S. government in the water. And while they're out there, big guy shows up again, and you're like, oh shoot, like this is crazy. And all the other things that Yamazaki kind of lays in there with, you know, Koichi as he's grappling with this stuff. He's got this group of friends that he's now made, and there's this woman, Noriko, who just kind of falls into his lap and has this little girl who isn't her own, you know, and it kind of creates this adoptive family that Koichi doesn't really get a say in. Yet, as the movie progresses, like, these people all care about each other, and you, by, like, proxy, kind of care about all of them. And the other thing, too, is, like, while Noriko and Koichi are really, really fascinating, interesting characters that you gravitate to, like I said, the surrounding characters and cast also are people you're invested in. You know, the crew of the ship that Koichi is on. You know, you got the captain, you got an older guy who used to be a scientist that they call Doc, and then you got the super young kid who's so green, he's just licking his chops to get a shot at anything, that they call the kid. And the kid, Doc, and Captain are three characters that you just can so easily relate to, even if one of them is, you know, a scientist and the other two are kind of like, you know, your normal blue-collar workers. And watching all of that, like I said, it's just a group that you can ride with. And then as things start to progress with Godzilla, the thing that I really dug about the human story is we didn't dive into these boardrooms and these government officials and these people coming up with these crazy plans. Like, there's literally a line where a former, like, Navy captain is like, we can't rely on the Japanese and United States government to take care of this creature. We got to do it ourselves. And the things that they come up with to try to take out Godzilla, using their scientist buddy Doc, they make sense. They feel like they're simple and not impossible to pull off, yet also like could totally be something that worked. And how they just execute all that stuff is wonderful, where you're invested and you're on the edge of your seat all the way to the end of the movie. And I have to say, so much of the human character elements really does come down to wonderful performances that you get from Ryunosuke Kamiki, who plays Koichi. He's just wonderful. The way, like I said, he grapples with all the things that he's grappling with, and how you see it on his face, and these moments of regret. And like, there's multiple things where he has these times where it's like, I regret doing this thing, and then you get there, and then it's like, oh no, is it gone, or is there gonna be a chance? And just how Kamiki handles all of that stuff, I just think he's a really excellent lead that, like I said, has this subtleness to him and goes through something that you as an audience member can be like, yeah, man, if I was sitting in that plane and all of a sudden it dawned on me what I was about to go do, like, I understand where he's coming from, and you feel that in his performance. And then as the movie builds to its climax, this kind of full circle journey that he goes on brings him to this moment where you're like, oh my gosh, Koichi, and it works so well, and Kamiki sells it perfectly. Then Noriko is played by Minami Hamabi. She's excellent. Like, she's sharp and witty, and like the way that she can just kind of control and take over a room is one of these things where you understand how the situation that these characters end up in happens, but you also can see just this balanced relationship between her and Koichi as they're exploring things. Like, they're together for a long time, but they're never really romantic per se. So like, the way that they look at each other and they interact with each other, and where Yamazaki takes their story, is something that, like, I just loved following. And like I said, this is something that you could get behind if Godzilla wasn't in the movie. Like, the movie would be interesting, just the stuff that's going on with these two characters, and they're just a pair that you really want to ride with. And like I said, when you layer them with really interesting characters around them to support them, you just get something special. And the rest of this cast, whether it is Koronosuke Sasaki, who plays the captain, he is absolutely hysterical. The amount of times he has just these one-liners or these points of reference that he cut, like where he comes from, like every time just makes you laugh out loud. Then you add in Hidetaka Yoshioka, who plays Doc. I really love what he brings. He's another person who's got like this wit to him and this charm where like he says things and like you understand him as a scientist and someone that you can trust. But every once in a while, like his reactions too, especially next to the captain, you're just like, you can't help but laugh at the way that he does it. And then Yuki Yamada, who plays the kid, is just a breath of fresh air every time the kid's on screen. He brings such this youthful, joyous energy to everything that's going on, and the way that he sees things, like the wide eyes that he gets sometimes, it is just another thing that you tend to just gravitate towards. And that crew with, Koichi and Noriko and what's going on there, like, you're just so about them. And then you add in Munetaka Aoki, who plays Mr. Tachibana. He's one of the people that was on the original island that we start on with Koichi that comes back around toward the end, and this is something that plays into like the full circle story. But when he re-enters the movie and how he functions, it just plays so perfectly into the Koichi story. Like, you just sit there and you're like, this guy, freaking Takashi Yamazaki, just knocked this thing out of the ballpark, man. And then, like I said, where he leaves you with Godzilla, you just can't help but be excited and want more. And I hope that we get more, because Yamazaki really understood the assignment. And he delivered something, like I said, is one of the best movies of the year, period. And in all honesty, should be a front runner for foreign film of the year when it gets to Oscar time. That might be crazy to some of you to say that about a Godzilla movie, but I was really, really taken aback with what Yamazaki pulled off here, and whether it's just the gorgeous nature of everything that's going on with Godzilla, including when he charges up, man, I think they refer to it as heat breath in the movie, but when he fires that nuclear laser, anytime it pops up, you are like terrified. And how they play with that stuff is wonderful. Down to, you know, this human group that you really just kind of want to ride with the whole time. This is just an absolutely excellent film. You've heard just about everything I got, so let's get the C-Maniacs up. Like I said, tremendous Godzilla stuff, an unbelievable score. The sound design here is excellent. The acting is fantastic, and when you're talking about a writer, director, and visual effects supervisor all being the same person, and all of them being Takashi Yamazaki, this is a name I'm gonna keep my eye on over in Japan. See what he's up to next, because what he pulls off here, man, is just the best Godzilla movie I've ever seen. So 5 out of 5 C-Maniacs for the Seaman. It is the 6th film this year to land with a 5 out of 5, and that is a lot for me, but there's a lot of like really perfect comic book things, so something to not be in that sphere. There are 3 movies that got 5s that were not comic book related. This is one of them, and I genuinely think it is one of the best movies of the year, period. So 5 out of 5 for me. The question is, what are you guys thinking? I want to know what your thoughts are on Godzilla. How big of a fan are you? Have you watched all the Toho Godzillas? How long have you been riding with the big guy? And when you look at the difference between what Hollywood does and what comes out of Japan, which do you prefer? Which do you think is executed better? And do you think it pays off when you're looking at what Yamazaki does with Godzilla Minus One comparatively to go about things the way that he does as opposed to what Hollywood does? Anything you got, good, bad, indifferent, but hopefully spoiler-free, put it down below in the comment section. Look forward to talking to you guys down there. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you're new, you want to come hang out with the C-Man anytime. We're talking movies, TV, trailer, reactions. You want to be here for other things that I might review. There's another movie that came out of Japan that is absolutely excellent that we'll be talking about called The Boy and the Heron. You want to be here to see what I got on that or anything else. You want to show a little love and support and you haven't yet, come join C-Maniac Nation. Super easy. Jump over there, hit the subscribe button, hit the little bell if you want those alerts, and until next time, for the C-Man's Cinema Sit Down, I've been the C-Man. I'm signing off. Peace. Oh, you guys are still here. You snuck up on me. You must be looking for more of this guy. Well, I got 2 video options for you, man. Right up here and right over here. And if you want all those C-Man goodies, well, hey, come join the squad right on over there, and I'll catch you on the next one.